Welcome to Transform. I'm Luz.
And I'm Anne. And this week on Transform, we're sitting down with Jeff Siegler, who's the author of Your Town is Sick. And he's a straight talking champion for small towns who've lost their way. Jeff's message is bold. If we want to transform our town, we have to stop waiting for rescue and start taking responsibility. This episode is a tough love blueprint for anyone who still believes in the places that they call home. So, welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, you've played a pivotal role in our world. We love your book. I always think revitalization is a bit like the weight loss industry. There's all these, and religion, there's all these like carbs are bad, carbs are the only thing, or, you know, whatever it is, Protestantism, Catholicism is the way. And it seems to be the same in small towns, in town revitalization. But what I loved about your book is you made it so accessible. You didn't have to be a big fixer, or you could kind of do it from an individual's. I love the fact that your book is called Your Town is Sick, and I wondered what you thought were the symptoms of a sick town.
First off, thank you very much. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and you touched on a number of things that I think are pretty important there. But yeah, I did want to make something that was more accessible. I feel like too often in this field, it's a lot of planners talking to planners and architects talking to architects, and everybody is trying to be very smart and that misses the point. I think that what we need to do is speak to the average person, the person that's not in the field, because place is such a personal thing, and it's something that everybody experiences it. And I don't think we're doing ourselves much of a favor if we only talk about these things in terms that push people away. So that mattered to me, and I love that you brought up the weight loss industry, because I think that's such an important way to look at this. I think back to my friend Alan Branch, who's now the mayor of Panama City. I When I saw him a few years ago, I was like, "Oh my God, Alan, you've lost a ton of weight. How'd you do it?" And he said, "Well, it was simple. It just wasn't easy."
Yeah.
And I think that that's really the key to revitalization. Like, this stuff is really simple. It's just not easy. You have to make things better every day. You have to make little changes. There's no mystery how to
Yeah.
revitalize. You take the physical components of a community and make those nicer, each and every day, and over time, then everything becomes nice. But yeah, you that's not as fun or sexy as selling a plan, or this new project, or whatever it is that somebody there's always a project that's going to fix it, or there's always a plan that's going to fix it. But just like diet pills, that doesn't work. There's no secret, there's no shortcut. In essence, you have to consume less calories and burn more calories, and you have to do that for a long, long time. And that's no fun. That's why people don't, it's like we all know how to lose weight, we just don't like to do it. And and I think it's the same with revitalization. It really is pretty straightforward, but not everybody wants to do it, and that's okay.
You talk a lot about civic pride. What, when you go into somewhere, can you tell a city that has civic pride and a city that doesn't? And if so, how can you identify which city is which?
Nearly immediately, honestly, and I think it's the same as when you see a person. You can kind of tell whether somebody is carries themselves. If they're proud, if they and that's perfectly okay. I think sometimes we're shy about saying that. And it's like, well, we shouldn't judge, but it's like, but no, actually, that's how we navigate the world. That's what people want us to know about them. It is their appearance. It's what they chose to wear. It's how they choose to groom themselves. It's what, that's all we have when we meet somebody, and that's all we have when we meet a community is, well, what does it look like? Because that's going to inform us a lot. And so, yeah, you can get to a town, and if the sidewalks are cracked, and if the windows in the downtown buildings, basically the condition of the downtown buildings and the public realm, is a pretty good indicator of what a community feels like. And I look at it in the same way as a person. If you're having a great day, you've hit all your steps, you got a new haircut, or maybe a shirt or something, and you look in the mirror and you're like, oh wow, feeling great today. You exude that confidence. You feel good, and you make better decisions about yourself, and that's really going to be something that people see. And I feel it's the same about a town. If you walk in your downtown and it's cracked sidewalks and weeds growing everywhere, and empty buildings, that's how you're going to feel about your town. But it's also how you kind of feel about yourself. and that's when people speak disparagingly about their town, and it's a community self-esteem issue, but it also comes an individual self-esteem issue.
Mm, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I went to see a new town that had a beautiful old downtown Main Street at one point. It was sort of based on, I don't know, Haussmann principles or something very highfalutin. And by the time I got to see it, it was half its teeth were missing. A lovely big buildings and big fat gaps, all of which I recognize are they're big projects to fix. But I was expecting like temporary hoarding across the toothless ones,
Hmm.
hanging baskets, maybe those pretty lampposts with, the banners and stuff. And there was nothing. And I'm always looking out for the tiniest little things to just give me an indication that somebody there, A, knows what they're doing, B, is starting where they can. I mean, a budget of 20,000 will make an impact. It's not going to fix the town, but at least it's giving the impression that somebody cares. And for towns like that, from where I come from as an individual investor, I just walk. I'm like, nope, no, life's too hard. But when you're coming in as a consultant and the cities are bringing you in, what, where do you start?
I guess with the truth, that I actually had a really good, um, yeah, I like to ask, what's wrong? Why did you bring me in? Clearly, there's something wrong. You go to the doctor or something when, obviously you have your regular routine, but more often when something's wrong, and I feel like I'm contacted when they feel like something's not right, and so I want to know what that is. What has gone wrong? Why don't you feel as good as you should? I had a really good conversation up in Minnesota with the community recently with, it was the county, it was the city, it was school board, and I was like, what's the health look? What is your community health right now? What's that look like? And we had a great conversation because instead, they're doing really, really well. It was the kind of an opposite situation where most communities I go to, they can't keep everyone from leaving when they graduate. This community was the opposite, that graduates couldn't, the kids that move away couldn't afford to move back home. And so it was a really cool conversation about, is that healthy? Sure, you could say economically we're doing great, but economically isn't really the whole picture. If you can't afford, or if teachers and firefighters and your own kids can't move back, something's amiss, and that's also a part of community health that we need to have real conversations about. How do we repair that?
And on the built environment front, where do you think is a good place to start?
I think about a community in Kansas who asked me, "Give us your impression. Give us your first honest impression." And I said, "It's very hard to love." And I found that that was a very useful place to start because it's not necessarily placing blame, but it is pointing out the fact that you all expect people to love this thing. And maybe you do because you've got context. Maybe your family's from here. You know it. You know the stories of this place, and it means more to you. But for the average person, it's very hard to love. And we should stop being so surprised when people don't. The onus shouldn't be on the individual to summon up all these ways to love something that's hard to love. If you just look at it, it's not necessarily appealing. It wasn't attractive. It's not well maintained. It was very hard to love, and you should ideally want something to be easy to love. You should make your place really easy to love. We do this thing in community development. I hear it all the time. It's like, oh, if we can just change the culture here, if we can just get everybody involved, we can make it nice. And it's like, no, no, that's backwards. If you make it nice, everybody will want to be involved. They'll love it. So stop trying to make everybody community development minded. Just make it nice.
Yeah, exactly. What are examples of making stuff nice that you've seen work?
I think that one of the most crucial places to start is just with code enforcement. That it's absolutely unacceptable to let buildings sit empty, to let vacancies and blight continue to exist. That's the bare minimum of what we should be doing is having standards in place and forcing property owners to take part, to do their bit. We're really, really good here about investing in the public realm. I mean, we could obviously do better, but streetscapes are, it's not uncommon at all for a municipality to invest in downtown streetscapes. And so here we'll put millions and millions of dollars at the foot of these buildings, and making the public realm nice. But like, how dare we ask anybody to invest in their own property? It's backwards. So I
Yeah.
think at a minimum, we have to be really strict about building codes and enforce it and increasing our standards and making sure the private sector is doing their part.
Tell me on code enforcement, how far does that go? If the city is enforcing, standard stuff on a building, is it? I've never seen it play out to the end. What is the end? Is that where they make them? They're forced to sell it because of liens or something?
Typically what you see is the fines will start coming in, kind of a minimum maintenance ordinances or that sort of thing, and fines start coming in, and more often than not, those people decide to sell. They're not invested, they don't care. It's usually an inheritance kind of
Mm.
situation. So this might be the third generation owner. They've never put a dollar into the building, and they're happy to rent it to anybody. Or there's even cases where they're happy to let it sit empty. And the we always make this assumption that, like, oh, somebody should be motivated that owns a building. They should be rational in the fiscal marketplace and they should want to fix it up and rent it. But all too often that's not the case. They don't care. So I do think the onus is on the municipality to make them care. So typically, yeah, the fines start piling up and they'll just decide, hey, I'm done. I want to sell it. And then you have a real opportunity for somebody else to buy the building and fix it up. And that's where real change starts to happen.
So when you're working with the municipalities on code enforcement, is there ever any type of incentives that the city also puts forth as far as maybe grants or funding that they say, okay, if you start working on this, fixing your codes, we'll help provide X number of, I don't know, exemptions or benefits or incentives for you to do this?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's proper. I think it is good politics to start with the incentive, and then follow up with sort of the punitive, because I think it is good politics. You can say, look, we've offered money, we're trying to help. We're not, we don't want to be in the business of punish everybody, but on the other hand, nobody took it. So if that's not their incentive, if that doesn't move them, then we have to use these other tools. So facade grants are pretty popular. Low interest, no interest loans. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think that's also important that city leaders determine, is the property even economically viable? Is the like, if it can work without incentives, great. Don't put them in. But if it needs help, if the pro forma is sort of upside down, then I think it is up to the public sector to sort of figure out how do we help these numbers. But again, it never happens unless these building owners, the kind of the deadbeat owners, are pushed out, if you will.
Yeah, I know. That's what really does my head in. You come into a town, you're full of enthusiasm, you want to buy stuff to take a lot of risk and invest in it. And you're surrounded by people who've been sitting on stuff for two generations or the last 15 years of doing nothing. It's falling down, it's devaluing your investment. You think, am I the only idiot around here? All these beautiful buildings that are underused. And what really drives me mad is when I love interim use. I love a bit of good interim use, some really cool pop-up things and temporary stuff. And when they won't even encourage that, that just drives me insane. You could have all these crazy, cool stuff, and they just lock up the buildings, nothing in the front windows. I don't know what to do about them.
It is amazing that a community isn't. I mean, I don't think city leaders really understand the impact of that. There's really, these empty downtowns. I mean, it's not only, it's an increasing in crime. A vacant property absolutely increases crime. So it's an increase in fire. So fire protection. You've got police, but then you're also going to have the loss of property values. You've got vagrancy. You're going to dampen civic pride. You're going to dampen tourism. Like, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars one empty building can cost the municipality over the course of a year, and all you have to do is be willing to tell somebody, hey, this can't sit empty. We have standards, and we've got the property rights thing so backwards that everybody shouts property rights, and it's like, no, you're misunderstanding what the courts did when they upheld property rights. They were protecting people's property investment. They were protecting people's rights to invest in a property and not have that money lost, not your right to be a deadbeat. So
Yeah.
it's all backwards. And I had this talk in Texas where I was explaining this, and the guy's like, "Well, you want me to tell me what to do with my building? It's America and we're free," which was somewhat funny. And I said, "You're absolutely free to live in squalor. I just can't fathom why you would want that for you, for your family, for your neighbors. Like that doesn't make any sense. Having standards is something that we understand. You have law enforcement, right? Like we have standards in other places that we enforce for good reason. Like why wouldn't we when it comes to property?"
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a killer to young people getting onto the bottom of the property ladder. All my experience in the UK was, now that I look back, it was because young people could get in at the ground level. For $70,000, you could buy a whole warehouse, and you couldn't afford to rehab it, but you could maybe afford to rehab the ground floor, get some interim use in there, get a little office for yourself, and before you know it, you're bringing life back at ground floor level, and then you're working out how you can fund it, and eventually that got a bit more industrialized. But I see here like so many prime buildings being sat on by people doing nothing and no plans to do anything, and highly offended when you suggest they might want to do something.
Right, right. And what a tragedy that not only, here's this asset that was probably once beautiful, that was built with quality, with local hands and these skills that might have come from, different parts of the world, that was really this, and housed all this commerce or these residential units. And then it is in it. Well, we'll get back to that, but I also think like too, it's like, what's the emotional damage of seeing something amazing deteriorate over the course of decades? To take something that was so special and watch that just go away, of course it's going to affect you. If you never cleaned up your house again, you'd be a different person in a year. You'd start to be a maniac. And I think that's kind of the same. So here's this really special thing that's been allowed to deteriorate because nobody will step in and say anything. And right, like that should be somebody's job. A building is a business, and I think that we don't look at that enough. That we're all obsessed with entrepreneurs, but we forget that a developer is the key entrepreneur. A building is a business, and that is such a great business for so many underemployed people are like, how great would it be to stay in your town and start renovating buildings and all the life that can come from that and all the economic activity. So it is a shame that we don't put more effort into those and do more with code enforcement and try to help young people understand, hey, this is the field that you could go into, and that's how our towns were built. And I think that we've honestly, like, we've kind of codified it out of our system that that they're renovating small things and building small things. It's too often it's so hard because of the codes we've adopted.
Say a bit more about that. Why? How do the codes impact?
you know, I think that a lot of cities I worked with in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they started putting more codes in place that were kind of suburban centric. So, let's see, might not be any upper floor housing allowed or minimum parking requirements and things like that. That just and then there's building departments. Building departments are more often than not they're pretty good at getting pole barns built at Dollar Generals, and they're not so good when it comes to these downtown projects. So I think there's just a lot of pieces in place that kind of that make it easier to develop suburban cheap vinyl stuff and make it really difficult for local people to build and renovate the buildings that matter most.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I'm doing uh, I don't even know why I call it rehab. I might as well have built it from ground up. Uh, 3 apartments, 1 store, taken from a pretty derelict building, and I have fully fire sprinkler because it's 3 apartments. If it was two, it would have been fine. That means I'm the first person to cut the road to get access. So there's all the costs that go with that. I mean, it is just I counted it up the other day. It's $60,000 just to be fire compliant. That's taken all the juice out of the project, and on, a million things like that around Uber Uber excess on retrofitting. You know, so much. I've never seen the like of it. But anyway, I'm not surprised people are
Right,
nervous.
right. I kind of see that. It's like we're becoming overly risk avoidant.
Mm.
We've become so risk averse that actually we're doing damage in the other direction. I mean, I was was in Paris not too long ago, and like not a single unit that I stayed in would be legal here. But it's like they, it's like, well, our streets are designed around the fire truck, not the other way around. Like we design everything with this for fear of any risk on, but like it creates this other problem where we don't have anything nice. There's nothing fun, there's nothing pretty. Like maybe we've gone too far in the direction of risk avoidance, that it's having a toll in a different direction, that there's not enough housing, that there's not enough units, there's not enough nice places, there's just there's not enough good stuff, and we should, like, places need to be pretty, they need to be fun, they should be joyful, and we should get together, and when we, I guess, regulate away any risk at all, we kind of do some damage in a different direction, unfortunately.
Have you come across a place recently that has given you hope about the future of small towns?
Yeah, that community I was working in Minnesota, Detroit Lakes, was amazing. It was beautiful. It was, boy, when you see like the built environment and the natural environment like blend together in a seamless fashion, it's just gorgeous. And sometimes you get one or the other, but this community was really beautiful. A lot of lakes, a really pretty downtown, and what I loved so much about it was that to experience it firsthand, like there's a relationship that people have with their community, and more often than not, it's bad, or they were either unaware of it, or it's negative, it's bad, and we talk trash about the municipality, and people kind of feel selfish, but there, because the community gave people so much, because it was pretty, because it was fun, because it was connected, people couldn't give enough back. The philanthropic community was very deep. I mean, they never had trouble raising money. They had volunteer hours for, I mean, just they could not, you know, they couldn't use up all the volunteer hours that were willing. Like, people felt really special about the place they live, and understood that they were getting so much from it, that they felt compelled to give back. And that was just, I love seeing that, when you see that and experience that relationship, and how people talk about their town, and how they want to give back to it. It's really amazing.
What
Great.
do you, sorry, Louise, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's great. But I guess we can move right into the next question, which is you're a big believer in individual responsibility. So what does one person actually do to heal a town?
Yeah, I think that, start simple, obviously, go out, and anybody can pick up trash when they're walking. Anybody can pull weeds. It costs nothing to plant some hostas and lilies. Start with your block, but also, like, visit with the neighbor, move your grill out into the front, instead of doing everything out back. Like, simple things that make people feel more connected is the absolute way to get this stuff started. I like, everybody feels the same. We just don't know it yet. Like, you're not the only one in your community sitting back and thinking like, oh, I hate these empty buildings. Everybody hates them.
Mm.
So connect with those people, talk with them, and I found that if you bring 40 people to city council, you can have anything you want. you know Council doesn't want to stay till midnight every week, so have those fights, meet with people, talk with them about what matters, and show up to council to get something passed. But I do think, very simple, just connect with more people, have some fun, throw some, do more social stuff, and make sure everything looks as nice as can be. And that's it's like relentless incremental improvement. You get better 1% every day, by the end of the year you're transformed.
Exactly. That's exactly back to the weight loss exercise. Walk your 3 miles a day. Yeah, it's really boring, but it's exactly that, isn't it? It's all those little things.
It is. I mean, you can't just go to the gym once. You have to do it forever. And that, while maybe discouraging, I think also is kind of a salvation that, look, if we just do a little bit every day, if we just plant some flowers every day, if we just scrape the paint a little bit every day, like, that's how we do it. It's not a myth, it's not a secret. And if we just stay on that path, um, over time, things get better. And, right, like, it's frustrating to have to run every day to get in shape. It's frustrating to make those caloric decisions about what you eat. But on the other hand, the payoff is there. And if you can do it consistently over time, you transform, and that's pretty rewarding. And it makes people, like, it makes individuals feel good. It makes the community feel good. Everybody can feel really proud of accomplishing something like that.
This is something I was thinking about the other day, and here we are on Zoom from, you know, Florida, Pittsburgh, Illinois, and do you think the American dream is still rooted in place, or do you think it's all about, or it's all about mobility now, geographical mobility?
Um, I think it will always be rooted in place. I think that that is our health is so directly tied to the place we call home, where we find ourselves, and I think that that will never change. And so, like our well-being, our health is just dictated by where we live, and by our surroundings. And so, it's and in essence, like we're all going to chase that. Successful people are going to move to places that make them feel healthy and well, and if you're the type of place that makes people feel sick and unwell, you're going to maintain a population that's stuck. Those are the people that get stuck, that can't move, that are unable to, and that's not necessarily the situation that a community should find itself in. And so I think that we all are chasing places that make us feel better. We all travel, people travel to the same towns, and then you see where real estate values are the highest. And I do like those places are always going to be where people feel great, where they feel healthy and happy and joyful. And so I think place is always going to, whether it's the American dream or not, it's the fact that places that make people feel healthy are always going to be more successful. And sadly, there's just too few of them. That's the problem. That there's just so few of them. I remember first time I got to Seaside, and I wanted to hate it, because of what I had thought of it in my mind. And I got there like, oh, I love it because it's beautiful. It's not
Just
it's not.
explain to people what Seaside is in this context.
Sorry, yes, yes. Seaside was a master plan community, kind of the birth of New Urbanism. The Truman Show was filmed there, and it was a reminder that, like, oh, good design's not to blame. No, like it's just what's to blame is that there's only 10 nice beach towns in the country. That's not Seaside's fault. It's just it's desirable because it makes people feel great. It's beautiful. Like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And you wanted to hate it, but you didn't.
But it was
Yeah.
pretty, it's pretty. It was nice. I did. I wanted to hate it. I had this idea in my mind of what it would be, and yes, it is certainly full of the elite. It is full of people with with means. But like, oh right, that makes sense. If you have the money, you're going to want to move somewhere beautiful. Like it is a superior product in most places. So I get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some commonalities that you see in successfully small revitalized towns?
Um, it has to be real estate development forward. That needs to be absolutely critical. That you have to have a municipality that is putting incentives in place, but also punitive measures in place around building codes. You have to have a building code department that uh, is willing and interested in seeing these projects move forward. That their customer service approach, or that their customer service sort of friendly. Um, I think that they have to be open-minded and say yes, open to saying yes to people's ideas, and um, kind of getting out of people's way and sort of letting them be creative. Like people want to do the right thing, and we have to be willing to risk letting them. And usually it turns out okay. Um, and beauty, flowers. I mean, really, like I hate to oversimplify it, but like start with the simple stuff. Make it pretty in little ways. I always think back to one of my favorite conversations was a mayor in Medina, Ohio, and somebody had asked, like, "God, you keep putting more and more money into the town square and flowers. Why?" And he's like, "Well, every year it gets prettier. Every year we get more visitors, which means sales go up. So the best retailers in the county keep moving here, which means the property values keep going up. So the taxes go up, and then the houses next to it are the most desirable." He's like, "I'm planting flowers, and now all the real estate in town has gone up in value." Like, well, that's pretty amazing.
Exactly. So, how can real estate investors, like many of the people be watching this, be part of the solution?
I think it is really key for those investors to be the ones to go in front of elected officials and municipal staff and say, "Hey, we actually do want better codes. We need your help. Like let's open up the books. Let's talk about performance. If one, can we make these work? And if not, I think it's really informative if everybody's open and honest about, hey, like there's no way to make these projects work, so we probably need some more incentives. Also, like you're killing us. If you're not going to enforce the codes, you're basically disincentivizing new investment if you're not going to hold people accountable for the condition of their property. And I think coming from developers and investors, I think that's such a strong message. You always assume that property owners are never going to want more rules, but it's like, I'm a driver, I want rules of the road. I think it's powerful when property owners go in front of council and say, hey, we'd actually like you to enforce codes so that so we can create an environment that's hospitable to investment.
Mm, yeah, you're absolutely right. I've thought about that because I kind of like some local enforcement, but now I know everybody. I can't be the evil one that says this is really, really, really unfair. Like I have 3 measly apartments and I've had to spend 60,000 on water, and I can charge maybe $100 more a month on my rent. With other people with falling down apartments,
Right.
can just, as long as they never rehab them, they can keep on going forever, you know?
That is constantly the situation I see, and it is infuriating. You're discouraging the behavior you want and encouraging the behavior you don't all the time. And it's right. Like as my friend uh, Jaime Zarita put it, it's like you know, you need a permit to put on a new door, but absolutely nothing to let your building fall into the street. Like that seems backwards.
Exactly. And the worse it is, the more you're incentivized to not confess as to how bad it is, because the harsher the permitting environment gets.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I think those conversations need to be had with local electeds. Say, hey, look, maybe you're not thinking about it the right way, or it's just because we've done it this way, but this isn't the way forward. We're actively getting worse and creating a sad, depressed, and unhealthy population. And I mean, there's a real think about it this way. We've all taken a glance down that street or that block and felt like, oh, that's not safe. This feels dangerous. And that's our brain recognizing that healthy people don't tend to spend time in rundown places. There's a landscape of addiction, of crime. People gravitate towards certain areas to participate in antisocial behavior, and those places have a look and feel. So it's like it's those places create it. They attract it
Mhm.
and they create it. So the
Mhm.
cost of having places like that is way beyond what I think most electeds and city staff understand.
You're right. You keep doing the links between health, physical health, and healthy cities, and it's not been front and foremost in my mind. I think you're absolutely right. The
It it
connection.
it is, and it's and I find it such a great way to discuss this. um we don't need to talk about like health. We understand, as individuals, we all understand it, and it isn't just economic health. There's social health, there's mental health, and I think if more of us would use the lens of, does this decision make our community healthier, we'd be a lot better off. If we use that language, it's not like, does this Dollar General make us healthier? Like, well, obviously not. Does this new subdivision make our community as a whole healthier? Like, no. I think it's just such a useful way to start to talk about these things as a decision-making rubric.
Absolutely. So, if somebody wanted to get started today, practically, where would you suggest they start?
Um, Pull weeds, plant flowers, tend to your own space. Make sure that your space is nice, that your block is as nice as possible, but also, be social. Put together more social events. Do things, invite people to get together. I really do think that the basis for this sort of starts when people can kind of hang out and talk. When we realize that, oh, everybody I know wants the downtown buildings to, code enforcement, or everybody I know hates cars driving so fast down this road. I think it starts with simple things of a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of picking up, but making those first social connections and getting people, like, we're far more likely to fight for our town when we care about the people that live in it. So we have to find ways to meet those people and start to connect.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. From a built environment perspective, is there anywhere, my love is the downtown, the main street, and mixed use buildings, and getting enough ground floor animation going so that it's a cool town again. You can kind of forgive what happens upstairs a little bit if you at least the downstairs is working. So I'm always looking for gorgeous sort of centerpieces that are town, mixed use buildings right in the heart of downtown. If you had a choice, are you going to direct someone somewhere, where would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the face of the community. It's an identity. I mean, in essence, when you look at a person, you look at their face. And I think when you look at a community, you look at the downtown. That's that's the heart. Like there's no healthy communities that ever run downtown, and simultaneously, like every healthy community has a healthy downtown. You can't do it the other way. So I think that it is a must to, in essence, the condition of your community is the condition of your downtown buildings. That's your image, that's your identity, that's your self-esteem, that's your brand. Everything is locked up in the condition of those. And if it's not good, nothing else will be. So absolutely, that is where to start, and everything stems from that.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Jeff. Ladies, have you got any other questions?
So many, but I keep thinking about these lovely buildings that I would love to just take on, but that they're going to be millions and millions and millions of dollars to put into them just to turn them around and put them to work. And then I back off thinking, okay, can I really take on a project that big? So one question I do have is, how do you even begin to incentivize investors who could bring the millions of dollars to a community that they don't belong to, a community that's not theirs?
Don't look outside first off. Like, stop looking outside the community. That doesn't, that's just more extraction. And I think what you need to do is build that from within. That there's going to be contractors and subcontractors in this community. There's going to be young people. There's going to be entrepreneurs. There's probably somebody that's flipped a house or two, or that maybe they own a building and haven't figured it out yet. But I'd stay within the community and develop that locally, and that's going to be multifaceted. It's going to be, who are those potential entrepreneurs? Simultaneously, how do we build the real estate development infrastructure? That's attorneys and accountants that start to understand it, but more so the building department has to start to get it, and be able to understand how to get those projects done. But I think that the municipality can has every ability, to figure it out, because they should be running a pro forma. They should understand, look, let's take our five, priority buildings, and let's work with the developer to run a pro forma. What do the numbers look like? How short are we? Is it realistic? If this building is $100,000 short, that says one thing, and that's up to I think the philanthropic community, the private sector, the city, county, they can hopefully come up with some money there. But if it's, but if it's a break even, or if it's a profitable project, then there's something else is in the way, something. But that's good to know. I think not knowing the number is kind of the biggest problem. But once you know the number, and I know a lot of people that got started into real estate that didn't have money. Bernice Radel up in Buffalo, she borrowed her first project, and Bernice is awesome and amazing, but she fell in love with a building, and couldn't figure it out until she found somebody that gave her the first money to get started. And now she's renovated a ton of buildings up there. So there are plenty of ways, I think, to do it. I think the money isn't the biggest barrier, I guess, is my belief. I think there's usually other structural barriers that keep it from happening, and it's critical to understand those.
Yeah, that sounds like a much more integrated relationship between the city and the developer. And just listening to you speak again, where my background is some of those young people went to the federal government and said, we can buy these buildings for diddly squat, but the rehab is the killer. So you can buy something for 200,000, but the rehab might be 4 million. Big
Right.
big warehouses. The ARV is going to be 1.6 for the next 3 years. And I didn't have much to do with it. I was the recipient of some of these grants, but in the early stage, there's enough pilot schemes to go, give us the gap funding
Right.
between the costs and the ARV, so that this makes sense. But that only had to be done for about 5 years before real ARV caught up. That's the fastest way I know, because everything else is so complicated. It was complicated enough, but at least it was one agency that you went to.
Right. I think that is absolutely the way to do it is find out what that gap is, figure out how to fill it. Because and that sounds like hearsay, but on the other hand, like, no, every city throws a ton of money at economic development. They just do it in the dumbest fashion. It's like, oh, if that was just a national chain or some sort of out of town corporation, of course, we'll give them everything. We'll absolutely give them the farm. Like,
Exactly.
we have no problem using taxpayer money to give out of town businesses a leg up and make sure they come in. But God forbid you talk about doing it for somebody local. It's insane. That is where the investment should be. We should be putting a ton, all the economic development money should be going into incentivizing local entrepreneurs, giving it to get these buildings up and working, making that public realm, like make the public realm as beautiful as possible. And then all of a sudden the private sector, then it gets a lot easier. Then those rents are going to go up. So I think that just spend that money locally, and there's just nothing more important you can do to get those to get that downtown thriving.
It's almost a no-brainer because even if that developer walks off into the sunset, the money's gone into the building.
Right.
It's not gone into his pocket because it's purchase cost plus construction costs equals the overall costs, which there's not much for them to be walking away with for at least a few years. But what's left is a functioning building.
Right, right. No, we've like economic development brain has poisoned everybody, and I think made everybody as dumb as possible somehow. It should go into local hands. It should go into creating local wealth, and simultaneously, right? You get just adding jobs doesn't do anything, but when you improve the built environment, when you improve these buildings, like that is something. That's something that lasts. But the other nice thing that you point out is like you don't have to do it forever. Let's
Yes,
say you have those programs in place for 5 years, but then all of a sudden the market corrects and you can get rid of all those projects. Like it's not meant to last forever. Economic development has become the sort of self-sustaining beast that wants to stick around forever. But it's like, no, once the market corrects for this sort of gap that we experienced through lack of investment for so many decades, like then you don't have to keep doing it.
yeah, exactly. And I've seen it, and I like I was it was the fund was called English Partnerships Fund, which did that gap funding, and we did 3 buildings using EP. And then I went for the fourth. They were like, the program was doing this skinny little thing. I was like, oh yeah, it's coming to the end of its life. And eventually it went away. And that probably
Right.
took 9 years between building one and the last building.
Mm.
It was no longer relevant, it's no longer a thing. And that was in a big region. It wasn't just in a single city. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen it happen. And it really, really helped the pioneers out. And then when the pioneers have done their bit, then everybody, all the big guys
Right.
go in and go, yes, we're really good at this kind of stuff. This is our kind of stuff.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, that's what you're shooting for.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Jeff, you have been very gracious with your time and it's been great to know, to get some insights from you who are working on the ground all the time. If people wanted to buy your book or work with you, where can they find you?
Sure. My website is revitalizerdie.com. So fairly easy to remember. I have I don't know, hundreds of blog posts on there with the touching about on all of this stuff. You can find the book there. I post pretty daily on LinkedIn and Facebook, and so you can buy the book there. There's a contact form. So yeah, you can go on there and get in touch, and happy to discuss working with anybody.
Yeah, and what's your ideal client on the private sector side?
Oh gosh, no, I don't know. France. Let's say France. No, no, I really work with it really just depends. Sometimes it's the Chamber of Commerce that'll reach out, sometimes it's the mayor, the municipality, other times tourism, economic development offices, often. So yeah, anybody in any capacity that is working in community revitalization usually reaches out. So I work all over the country, happy to work with anybody.
What size population do you usually look to work with? Nothing smaller than or nothing bigger than?
I don't have any of those rules. I do find that my work tends to put me in communities under 50,000, more like even under 30. That just seems to be what's common, but that's not any You know, that's not necessarily been my desire, but it's just, I guess where my background lends itself more.
Yeah, well, I have read lots of books on this and spoken to lots of people, and I'm reasonably educated, and what depresses me about the industry is there is a bit of a uh, mystery about this whole, oh, this is so bad, it's got to be cut. Cut out that bit of ramble, whoever's doing this edit. I'll start again. What I don't like is this complicated, very demanding, huge investment. Like there's a guy I was reading the other day and he was talking about, you have your big, what's it called? Your big sort of uh, landmark project. And the landmark project is the thing that turns around. Landmark projects piss me off so much because I just see millions going into something that I'd rather it go into blue and green infrastructure or pretty flowers or anything than just one big thing at the top end of town. What I love about your book is it just puts the responsibility on me to plant my flowers, to hassle the city, to send some text about enforcement that needs to happen. And it made me really hopeful that actually, yeah, we can all do this. So I'd really encourage anybody who gets a chance to read the book. It's very readable, very easy, and very empowering. So thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate the comment very much, and I feel strongly about that. I one of the first somebody had reached out to me early when I started doing this up in Jamestown, New York, and said, "Hey, look, we have a problem with literacy. We've got a outrageous poverty rate. The library was about to close, but they put $50 million into a comedy museum." And you're like, "Oh my God, this is why we shouldn't give golf bros economic, like, I don't know. It's just we've put too many finance people in charge, and they often, I don't think, understand that that's not how you fix a community. Just large amounts of money aren't what make a difference. It's large amounts of people all having a little bit involvement is how we improve things, not just a few people doing big things. So I appreciate that comment very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great being on. Thanks for having me.